Okay, I would like to welcome everyone to our November Sturgeon Moon poetry reading. Some of you are new to Sturgeon Moon, so I will explain the title briefly. Sturgeon Moon was selected by Elizabeth Oxley, a poet colleague of mine, and she also created the logo for Sturgeon Moon. Sturgeon Moon is the August full moon. And the reason it's called Sturgeon Moon is Native Americans during the full moon of August traditionally caught more sturgeon than at any other time. And the 23 of the 29 species of sturgeon are endangered. In the same way that some of us feel that lyrical narrative poetry is becoming a little bit endangered, we welcome all forms, all genres of poetry here. However, we honor lyrical narrative poetry, and the two featured readers we have today will be reading a lot of lyrical narrative poetry to honor that. Our agenda will be that we're going to have our two featured readers read, then we'll have 5 open mic readers read after that. And I'm still letting folks in here. Okay, so welcome everyone. And I would like to introduce our first featured reader, who is David Watts. And David Watts is most recently the author of Katie Bridge by St. Julian Press, just released this month. But he's also author of 33 additional books. And those include short stories, mysteries, westerns, Christmas memoirs, NPR commentaries, haiku, small books of aphoristic wisdoms, translation, and at the heart of it all, poetry. Trained as a physician and a classical musician, he turned to poetry midlife and has never turned back. He has led workshops nationally and teaches poetry at the Fromm Institute of San Francisco. His interest in the contribution of the unconscious to the process of creation has led to a body of imaginative work under the pen name Harvey Ellis, a leaping associative voice that is to be found as a quiet influence in parts of the current work. His new project is a collection of essays and reflections. Today, I think we're going to hear from opening with poems from his latest book, Katie Bridge, and then I think he's going to dip into some of his other books. So David, we love to hear you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Terry, and a great appreciation for the work you do with poetry in general, but also specifically in putting together Sturgeon Moon. So applause to you. I think that the reason that I was probably invited to this is this book here called Katie Bridge. Ron Starbuck is here today. He's the editor at St. Julian Press, did a fabulous job putting this together. So this year has been phenomenal for me. I have 5 books of poetry that are published, and they're all very different. So what I decided to do was to plunge into Katie Bridge first and give you a sample of what that's all about. And then we can perhaps have a couple of poems from each of the other books along the way. So I'm going to start with the poem, which is the title poem from Katie Bridge. It goes like this. Rumored to be a lover's leap over shallow water, home of ghosts, river running low in summer. Thought I remembered standing next to the girders one time, pressed flat by the bellow of a passing train. Turned sideways to the eyes of an awkward death that lured me there, foolishly there. I ignored his stare and didn't die. Never sure I really did that. The bridge probably made it up, where memories splinter and splatter like oil on the rails. Mostly, it was a place to take your girlfriend for a stare, a scare, a kiss and a dare, and beat it when the rails started to shake. Rare seasons I had one, girlfriend, that is. Scary thought, trains and girlfriends. What I can say is that walking the rails gets a tad different with trestles on either side of you. Always a train somewhere up the tracks headed your way, the rails alive like snakes slithering, the 4 o'clock hissing its way down from Waco. So the next poem was inspired by Jane Hirschfield, who had a poem about deer. And I liked that poem so much because it talked about the interface between nature and humans. So I made a poem inspired by that. It's called Two Deer in Early Morning. They came to my back door, the mother tall and slender, a smudge of gray, and the small one, a speckled fawn, neither confident nor afraid. They were munching my green grass, their furry kingdom close enough to reach into. I could almost stroke their ears, delicate as a breath. What would it be like to move with grace the way they do, gliding among the narrow trees, to dissolve in forests and reappear without regret or sorrow? If I stand very still, they will go back to chewing a tuft of summer grass. If I move, the fawn will turn her fire-streaked eyes on me, asking to know me for who I am. Conversation just a heartbeat, not spoken. Then the moment changes, for something has been watching from the forest and reaches now to draw them back, as if their world had waited too long to call them home, as if they were never here. Father, son, and dishes in the sink. Would you help your father unload the dishwasher? She says. And Gabriel turns his feet from the strong magnet pulling him to the sanctity of his room, where his parallel universe lives, and he will descend into the unreachable. He stretches a hand and lifts a spoon to its place among the community of spoons in the drawer. I squeeze 5 plates together to move to the cabinet. He does the same. I reach for the mixing bowl, and our fingers touch, and my father is in the spaces between us, humming his deaf tone as he tilts a glass into its perfect slip. I have watched him turn the glass just so among the elders standing like sentries on the shelf. And now my son watches me, imitating the reflection of my father down through the generations. 2 of us working, and the dishes disappear 3 times as fast. Then he is gone to his world that pulls him gently away. It's fine. He carries with him my father and me, and more I will never know. And then the last poem I'm going to read from the book is called Jenner Stones. Jenner is a town up north of San Francisco on the coast, and it's on the Russian River, has this great river that comes through and deposits these stones on the beach. At Jenner by the sea, we scurry over boulders to the place where the breakers bear down. The edge where rub and thrust rinses everything finally clear. It has taken a long time to get here, past failures at love, at marriage. But sometimes, after all, there is an act of grace. We are cautious and treasure everything in our tennis shoes. We teeter over the runnels that rush between footings in which, emptied by the gasp and suck of the sea collapsing back, we find the small stones we came for, jets of color, like floral nuggets compressed to their smallest density. Jadeite, feldspar, serpentine, and the one with an orange mango cloud marbling through like a fossilized sunset. We cannot know where they came from, though we imagine an ancient vein glowing under a billion years of sediment somewhere up the Russian River, a cliff quarried by the current's constant fingers, then fanned from the river's mouth and tossed on this beach like jewel stones left by a passing goddess. I press them between my thumb and forefinger. It may not be so bad to go on for years with nothing happening, nothing but the downward heft of sediment, and then this blossoming. So that's a little bit from Katie Bridge. My thanks to Ron Starbuck and St. Julian Press for making that possible. Now I'm going to turn to this little book. It's called Seed Kites, and it's a collection of haiku. Something happened to me in August of 2021, and I sat down at a desk and started writing haiku. I had no ideas I was going to be writing haiku. Never planned to do so, but suddenly it began to happen. I suppose that means something. Since that time, I've written a lot, and so here's a collection, the latest one, which is coming from Red Moon Press. This book is divided into the seasons, and so we're going to start with summer, and I'll give you a piece of each one. Summer. Suddenly small in the south pasture, oceans of sky. These go by pretty quick. Summer day. No telling where that fly just was. Tree climbing weather. The face of my child in branches. Now we're into autumn. Honey jar. Sticky fingers every time. Before lovemaking, she parts the curtains to let in the moon. Now we're into winter. First winter together, learning her seasons. Gathering storm, scent of rain down the canyon. Freezing in the duck blind. I don't even like duck. Snowy owl, a billow of moonlight on a branch. Springtime. Break of day, bird song pulls in the light. Barn dream, picking glints of hay from her hair. In wind, even the broken reed can sing. So that's a little touch of the seed kites, the haiku. Now, the third one I'm going to be reading a little bit from is called Ellis Mode, and it takes a little explanation. I love to write the narrative poetry that Terry is fond of writing as well. But I also like to write the associative, and I didn't find a way to get there right away, having been trained in science and being very narrative and linear in the way that I think a lot of the time. But I devised a way of uncoupling the unconscious from its cavern. And so I think I did. Who knows what I did? But I figured out this way of writing, which was rather unconscious. And it produced these poems, which I put under a pseudonym in order to keep them separate from the rest of my work. This first poem I'm going to read is about an event that actually happened. And she said the bird flew directly at her and chirped 3 times, then flew into the tree. What she meant to say was that bird carried some of his spirit. And I wondered what part of the soul flies into a bird that signals the grieving loved one like that. I imagined the color orange shifting its weight into the strings and pulleys that flapped the wings until it made its signal of goodbye. Just a little trail of I love you and the ripple it made on the surface of the air. What's not of interest? What's not of interest scratches at my door trying to get interesting. Like the run back to Safeway for the credit card I thought I left but found out a place in my billfold. You see, that uninteresting fact just made it in the door. Naming the cats. She was surrounded by acceptance the way she could even name the cats without objection, as if a cool buttercream atmosphere had assembled around her. In this manner, she could let flow her personality and choices that had been hiding under the covers all these years. He exchanged any disagreement he may have had for silence and the release of clingy responsibility. In that way, control relaxed. And the cats had names you never would have thought of. My parents' grave. I waited for messages, but found none. And the wind hovered at the edge of the yard like a homeward surge, missing something. My hard listening asked me, what have I missed? But the mist stayed out there with the wind and told me nothing, waiting patiently there as stories in unread books. I was in no hurry, having come miles and years to this place where I could stop and listen, which was, as it turned out, the blessing itself. Tongue memory. I just struggled with that name again. You know, the one that's not easy on the tongue. Maybe it's the tongue's fault. Poor tongue memory. Sliding out of the mouth sideways like that. Maybe I offended the name once by not remembering it, and now it refuses to be remembered, as if punishment was having to work hard to pull it up from its hiding place between words like national debt and attrition, words that don't deserve to be remembered anyway. And the last one from this book, Body Wisdom. The thought came that I'm about empty of thought, but then vacuums have a bad habit of filling. So I listen for the next rainstorm and occasionally shift my feet just to keep moving, and it seems the body keeps on thinking whether I do or not. Like the time the woman saw the dermatologist, but the body game was not the outside the body game. So she couldn't tell her doctor about the little co-worker lustings or the time her father spanked her. It was the difference between taking a bath and eating a meal, just a little surface game when the body has its own plan. So she left her secrets with the hairdresser. Okay, so I have a little more time. What I'm going to do is read a few of these from what's called Daily Bouquet. And these, I show you this because it's not published yet. It's coming up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble right away. But I like this cover especially because our son designed it. And I think if this book sells anything, it's going to be his responsibility for having that happen. So these are what I would refer to as aphorisms, though I believe something has to be in place for years before it achieves that status. But I'll read you these little wisdoms maybe and see what you think. Not the flowers, but that you brought them. We are all tumbling through the universe on a curveball. The kiss is a door that wants to open. Teenage lasts from 13 to 50. Much deserves forgetting. Time is just a place with a strange address. You can't blame the answer if you ask the question. It takes considerable attachment to want to clean a room. The universe has questions too. Some politicians believe in divine corruption. Some friendships last forever. Some wash away with soap. Each year is smaller. Action has the appearance of competence. Success is all hard work and mostly luck. Love is able to say, I'll let you go. In the dark of winter, remember spring will weave her carpet of light. Someone inside us is always kissing somebody. Well, that's it for me. Thanks, Terry, for the opportunity.
Let's give David a round of applause. Thank you, David.
My pleasure.
I was going to add at the end of David's bio that I've known David for quite some time. I met him in the law residency MFA program at Dominican University.
Right.
His wife, Joan Barano, was the founder and director. And he and I hung out and would occasionally give a guest lecture. And I got to know him quite well. So thank you, David. I'm excited about your publications for the year, and thank you for reading.
Thank you very much, Terry.
You're welcome. Our next reader, I'm just as excited to hear from, although I have not known him, but just for a couple of months, and was very, very excited when I read Matrix, which is basically a book-long poem. It's difficult, even though he has in the table of contents some divisions to that poem. It's difficult to think of it as a collection. It basically is a long poem, and that makes it all the more difficult to make it exciting, which he has done without a doubt. I just put on the chat a few moments ago my blog site, because if you'd like to read a review of David's Katie Bridge and of Matt Bieler's Matrix, you can read more of the poems that perhaps he didn't read here today, or more sections of the book. And so I'm excited to present Matt. I'd like to read now his bio that I have here. Matt Bieler is the author of dozens of poetry books, including Viewmaster Land from Finishing Line Press 2023, Maze Finishing Line Press 2021, and Always Say Goodnight 2020. His poems have also appeared in many print and online journals, including Retort, Green Mountains Review, Forklift, Ohio, and Hangman. In addition, Matt is an acclaimed black and white street photographer who has exhibited his work widely. And I enjoy those black and white photographs that I see on Facebook a lot. They're fantastic. They're mainly street photographs of New York and very exciting. And some of his images are in the permanent collections of the Brooklyn Museum, the Museum of the City of New York, and the New York Public Library. He's also an accomplished watercolor landscape painter with works in many private collections. Let's welcome right now, Matt Bieler.
Thank you. I'm going to read Matrix, and the photos on the cover are my street photography. And I want to thank Terry for hosting me, and I want to thank Ron Starbuck of St. Julian Press for publishing this book. And it's been a pleasure to work with both of you, and I enjoyed David's reading so much. Sometimes it's not fun to be the second reader. So this poem matrix is in 4 parts, and I'm going to read from part 1. Part 1. On the Friday night before my 60th birthday, I watched Jurassic World. I've seen the park movies, but not the world ones. My girlfriend Mary and her 20-year-old daughter Samantha suggested I should watch Jurassic World. I had replied, I don't know how many variations can there be of people being munched by dinosaurs, and then dumb people go back for more. Mary replied, but they're fun, they're fun. Okay, I'll give it a whirl. I'm staying home tonight because Mary and I have a big night out for my birthday. On Saturday, even though my birthday is actually on Tuesday, but we have other plans for the night of my birthday, other plans. So I'm resting up because turning 60 makes me feel like a dinosaur. A dinosaur. One of the first scenes of Jurassic World is a big monster water dinosaur being fed a great white shark like it's only a tasty little snack. I think to myself that this thing must be at least 100 feet long, bigger than a blue whale. Afterwards, I'm curious. I Google the water dinosaur I just saw in the movie. Did it really exist? The movies have been pretty good about introducing people to some lesser known ones like Spinosaurus or Velociraptor. How many paleontologists have these movies inspired? The water dinosaur did exist. It's called Mosasaurus and the king of the sea about 82 to 66 million years ago. In reality, it was about 56 feet long at its largest, still much bigger than a city bus, and it fed on prey such as sharks, plesiosaurs, and even mosasaurs, other mosasaurs. It was not a dinosaur, but a group of marine lizards like a gigantic Komodo dragon or monitor lizard. Might have been related to snakes, might have had a forked tongue. When I was a kid, dinosaurs were reptiles. The word itself meant terrible lizard. I had a favorite named Brontosaurus. It doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist. It got renamed, or was actually 2 different dinosaurs that were no longer lizards, but birds, discontinued like New Coke. I used to play with toy T-Rexes and Brontosauruses, and Pluto is not a planet anymore. My childhood was a lie. Mosasaurus means Meuse lizard, referring to the river near which it was first found. One paleontologist says, though the movie depiction isn't all the way accurate, it's still pretty close, and adds like a proud father, it's fun to see Mosasaurus finally get the red carpet treatment. The red carpet treatment. The skull of Mosasaurus was equipped with robust jaws capable of swinging back and forth, and strong muscles capable of powerful bites using dozens of large teeth adopted for cutting prey. Its forelimbs were shaped into tiny paddles to steer the creature underwater. Its tail was long and ended in a downward bend and a paddle-like flute. Predator possessing excellent vision to compensate for its poor sense of smell, a high metabolic rate suggesting it was endothermic or warm-blooded. I asked myself, how do they know any of this? How do they know? Had a transatlantic distribution with its fossils found in marine deposits on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, including the Midwest, the East Coast of the United States, Canada, Europe, Turkey, Russia, the Levant, the Africa coastline, from Morocco to South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, and Antarctica. This guy sure got around. When I was a kid, dinosaurs were reptiles. The word itself meant terrible lizard. I had a favorite named Brontosaurus. doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist. It got renamed, or was actually two different dinosaurs that were no longer birds, no longer lizards, but birds. Discontinued like New Coke. I used to play with toy T-Rexes and Brontosauruses, and Pluto is not a planet anymore. I look up the fossils of Mosasaurus. I find a tooth 82 million years old, set in a matrix, the fine-grained portion of a rock in which coarser crystals or rock fragments are embedded, or other bone and teeth fragments. I wonder, how is it possible for something to survive tens of millions of years? How is it possible? It's like a footprint across time, a footprint across time. I remember how after you died, I felt like I was now extinct. You certainly were. With friends and your cousin, we sorted through your clothing and brought 40 large black of your clothing to Housing Works in our neighborhood in Brooklyn. Black for death. Our now 20-year-old daughter, Izzy, wanted no part in this operation, no part. She stayed in her room so the monster of grief wouldn't get her. So I was trying to figure out what Izzy might want in the future. She'd want something of you, I figured, something of you. The monster of grief. Sometimes I thought about going back to the store to see if your clothing was still there on the racks, excavate you, but I never did. And the store itself is now gone, extinct. I remember how after you died, I felt like I was now extinct. You certainly were. I was struck down for the first time in my life. I had no chance. No chance. I once read that if one is confronted by a mountain lion, one's dog, no matter how big, has no chance. No chance. I had no chance against Mosasaurus, the monster of grief, extinct, not even a tooth. When I was a kid, dinosaurs were reptiles. The word itself meant terrible lizard. I had a favorite named Brontosaurus that doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist. It got renamed, or was actually two different dinosaurs that were no longer lizards, but birds, discontinued like New Coke. I used to play with toy T-Rexes and Brontosauruses, and Pluto is not a planet anymore. So I'm resting up because turning 60 makes me feel like a dinosaur. A dinosaur, a footprint across time. That's the end of part one. Part two. On Saturday night, I meet Mary at Le Gratin, multi-Michelin star chef Daniel Balloud's brand new restaurant in the Beekman Hotel down in the financial district. Tiled floors, crescent leather booths and banquettes, vintage mirrors and Art Nouveau details, all bathed in a gentle light from ceiling-hung globe fixtures. High-set illuminated Roman numeral clock that divides the space between the front and the back, with a French menu influenced by Lyon, Balloud's hometown. We are both forward and backward in time, a tooth 82 million years old, set in a matrix. Situated in the former site of Keith McNally's restaurant, Augustine, which didn't survive the COVID pandemic, didn't survive, no chance, extinct, not even a tooth. We order cocktails and toast only the beginning of my 60th birthday festivities, only the beginning. On Tuesday evening, my brother, sister-in-law Mary, and nephew Harry will come to Brooklyn, all the way from Michigan, and Mary and her daughter Samantha and Izzy and her boyfriend Seamus will join, and we'll have dinner at a favorite Italian restaurant in Park Slope, Sotto Voce, and then go to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, for a dazzling light show called Lightscape. Of course, it's tough to turn 60 without you. I never could have imagined. I've reluctantly continued my journey, leaving you behind. But I'm excited for future plans and excited about the here and now of being with Mary. We are both forward and backward in time. We also post the first year of Mary's new job at PEI Group as editor-in-chief, PEI Hub. She leads the content of all things private equity related, especially transactions, trends, and deal makers. Mary used to be senior editor, senior video producer for The Deal and broadcast reporter at CNN and MSNBC. Sometimes I find old footage of Mary on YouTube and try to imagine knowing her at another time. The restaurant feels like it is both in the future and in the past. Some of the decor is the same, some of it is different. In the future and in the past, we are both forward and backward in time. I order half a dozen oysters as my appetizer. Mary orders oof mimosa, caviar de truita, deviled egg, trout caviar, pickled onions. We both hold hands across the table. Time with Mary is precious, and stands still. Because I lost love, I appreciate it so much more, every minute, every second. I'm proud that each of us is moving forward and doing it together. If somebody told me 4 years ago that I would be with someone else and be so happy, I would have never believed them. A footprint across time. As a main course, Mary orders loup de mer grillé and choux de Bruxelles, sauce verjus au raisin, grilled branzino, celery root puree, Brussels sprouts, brown raisin verjus. I ordered the roasted duck which is heavenly, and we share the pagnard à la crème, cream spinach, which is like the best we've ever tasted. Mary tells them it's my 60th, so they serve us a cup of delicious chocolate mousse. Afterwards, we explore the hotel. The Beekman, which has a great sense of history, contemporary and the aura of timelessness. As all three rolled into one definition of a luxury hotel, transported us into another, more glamorous, more beautiful realm, a footprint across time. As architects say, the hotel has great bones, occupied a landmark Queen Anne building from 1881, height of New York's early Gilded Age. One of New York's first skyscrapers with 9 stories built in, which is now the downtown financial district, around the same time as the Brooklyn Bridge. The building was then known as Temple Court, red brick turreted structure with a 9-story Victorian atrium and pyramidal skylight. The site saw the debut of Shakespeare's Hamlet in 1871, was also home to Clinton Hall that housed a beautiful library. The interiors were recently redesigned for the hotel, bookshelves in the bar room, in the atrium alongside leather club chairs, oriental rugs, portraits of famous authors like Edgar Allan Poe, who used to spend time in the building. 287 high-ceilinged guest rooms which ring the majestic atrium, original style moldings, period chandeliers. We're in some sort of Gilded Age, total chic funhouse. We are both forward and backward in time. A tooth, 82 million years old, set in a matrix, a footprint across time. We look up at the atrium, which reminds me of a building I used to live in Greenwich Village, when I first met you, called the atrium. When I was a kid, dinosaurs were reptiles. The word itself meant terrible lizard. I had a favorite named Brontosaurus that doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist. It got renamed or was actually two different dinosaurs that were no longer lizards, but birds. This continued like New Coke. I used to play with toy T-Rexes and Brontosauruses, and Pluto is not a planet anymore. I remember how after you died, I felt like I was now extinct. You certainly were. I was struck down for the first time in my life. I had no chance. No chance. I once read that if one is confronted by a mountain lion, one's dog, no matter how big, has no chance. No chance. I had no chance against Mosasaurus, monster of grief, extinct, not even a tooth. We watch all the people in the hotel sitting in the bar room, crowded because of the holidays. We're in some sort of Gilded Age, total chic funhouse. We are both forward and backward in time, like we're in the 1999 science fiction movie, Matrix. The visual effect known as bullet time or frozen moment, dead time, flow motion, time slice, in which the heightened perception of certain characters is represented by allowing the action within a shot to progress in slow motion while the camera appears to move through the scene at normal speed. Mary and I observed the world together, frozen moment, bullet time, dead time, flow motion, a tooth, 82 million years old, set in a matrix, footprint across time. That's the end of part 2. Part 3. On Sunday morning, before my 60th birthday, I find a video of an interview with Mary on YouTube from July 27th, 2008. She has that same radiant and playful smile, same wisdom and insight, beauty inside and out, self-confidence. Where was I on that day? Where was I? I sometimes feel I've always known her, even though I haven't always known her. In the video, she talks about creative partnerships cropping up among online video companies and traditional video, meaning television. Talks about what Daily Motion is doing with user-generated content. People can submit their videos and they might become a pop-up. If they see your video and think it has pop-up potential, they'll turn it into a pop-up video. Here, Mary is talking about this many years before TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, where people just post their own content. My honey is sentient. I see that Daily Motion is still around, but barely. They seem irrelevant. The word itself meant terrible lizard. I had a favorite named Brontosaurus that doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist. It got renamed or is actually two different dinosaurs that were no longer lizards, but birds. This continued like New Coke. I used to play with toy T-Rexes and Brontosauruses, and Pluto is not a planet anymore. I get a call from Mary. Oh no, she's tested positive for COVID. She had mentioned a scratchy throat yesterday. I asked her, are you all right? How do you feel? She says she has a sore throat and feels tired, but no symptoms, but no fever. Symptoms seem mild, at least so far. That means she and Samantha can't come out for my birthday Tuesday night. But I realize since I was exposed to Mary, neither can I. Neither can I. My birthday plans are out the window. I call my brother and tell him, oh well, at home I wear a mask around Izzy, who's home from school. Tuesday, my birthday, I don't really feel well, but I still test negative. If I'm going to get it, I just want to get it over with. I look at the birthday cheer for me on Facebook. I feel loved. My 5th grade elementary school teacher writes, I can't believe you're 60. Ken was young when he was my teacher. He stayed in touch with many of his students. I remember we watched a film strip about wet dreams and sex education. The girls were separated from the boys. Part 1, How Life is Handed On, a film strip. This was cutting edge technology. Nixon was president, a film strip. Essentially a series of images on a roll of 35 millimeter film that was inserted into a projector, allowed teachers to project one image at a time onto a screen, accompanied by narration and music on a vinyl record that went beep when it was time for the next image. The film strip taught me about sex. Film strip. And I remember a 16 millimeter Bell and Howell autoload rolled out into my classroom for a film about sex education. Jiminy Cricket taught me about sex. That's the end of part 3. Just in time for me to have some water. Part 4. I get a text that a Carvel ice cream cake is on its way, and I don't need to ask if it's from Mary. Sure enough, it arrives. I text Mary and thank her. You are so sweet and thoughtful. At 6 p.m., Mary tells me to look for a Zoom link in my email. She's arranged a birthday Zoom with my family. My parents, my brother and sister-in-law and nephew, my sister and her boyfriend, Izzy and her boyfriend, Mary and Samantha. Zoom, which has pushed out Skype. Everyone takes a turn with a memory of me, some of it embarrassing. I would cry and write miserable letters from sleepaway camp. I collected Band-Aids and toothpicks. What was my fascination with Band-Aids? Mary talks about my great capacity for love, that it comes from my parents, and the love I give to my family, Izzy, and to you, and to her. I think of the old game show Hollywood Squares with celebrity contestants, each in their own squares, like an onstage Zoom meeting. Paul Lynde, Phyllis Diller, Vincent Price, Joan Rivers, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Charles Nelson Riley, and Benjamin the Brontosaurus, all extinct, discontinued like New Coke. I look at all of us on Zoom, a different configuration from when you were alive, a footprint across time. Most of us had never heard of Zoom. I look at all of us on Zoom, and for a moment, we all freeze. We're all in bullet time, or frozen moment, dead time, slow motion, time slice. We all freeze. We're all in bullet time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks.
I have said to Matt that perhaps he has created a new form for a book. The juxtapositions, the intersections of language remind me of poems that repeat lines, but he, in this long poem, actually repeats sections of lines, and each time they're repeated, they're in a different context, in the same way that when our lives repeat, they're in a different context. And that form itself, I think, has captured something new as an entire piece, as an entire book. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Now, let's get ready for our open mic. I believe all of our open mic readers are here. Oh, I was going to say, David, would you and Matt post in chat? I posted the link to my reviews of these two books. Would you post in chat a way to purchase these books? Okay.
Sure.
That would be wonderful. Okay. And then while our open mic readers, open mic for Sturgeon Moon Poetry is by invitation. If you are interested in reading in a future open mic, please email me. I will put my email address in the chat as well. It's lucas.t274@gmail.com, but I will put it in the chat because I love to have different folks read for the open mic. And just as a reminder of our open mic, we read one poem, hopefully 40 lines or less. If you go over a little bit, that's fine. I will make a statement or two about the readers because I know them all. So the readers just need to read their poems, and we'll appreciate that. So first of all, for our open mic, I'm going to ask Barrett Warner to read. Barrett is a short story writer. He's an essayist. He's a critic. He's an editor, and of course, he's a poet. And Barrett, you can tell us when you get on if you've had a book since Why Is It So Hard to Kill You? That's the last book that I've read of yours. He's also the head editor of a Free State Review. So Barrett, would you read for us, please?
Sure. My new plan. My new plan is to live underwater. I bike in search of swimming pools outside my neighborhood. I'm a terrible swimmer. I'd rather hold my breath and freak out where no one recognizes me. My dad gives me a book by Jacques Cousteau as if to say, maybe that will steady him for a while. I feel weightless, hung in 10 feet of water. My scuba class is the first time I've ever broken a second sweat, a warm feeling in you, like being bitten by a bat in your sleep. Most of the other divers are couples, except one darkly tanned man with shoulder-long hair and a silver tooth. We fool around a lot, a game where you sneak behind someone and twist his J-valve to stop the oxygen flowing into his regulator. They get me all the time, but I never do that to anyone else. It's so intimate, a J-valve and kicking towards someone's aqualung is a panic for me. A woman with a skirt around her swimsuit asked me why I never shut off her oxygen. Says it's okay. Next week, I promise her, but I never do it. Still, I love the hyperventilation, the fussing over Boyle's law, atmospheric pressures, and showering afterwards with adults of my sex. One who is going to Hawaii to swim with whales and giant sea turtles. Andy adds, exhaling reefer, whatever else falls out of the sky. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Barrett. It's good to see you again, and it's good to hear some new work. Thank you very much. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I'd like to ask Shelley Chesley to read. Shelley has a new book out called Come Back Behind Your Eyes. That is from Longship Press, and that was just recently released this fall. So Shelley, would you read for us now?
Thank you, Terry. Silence. Black snakes made free with our attic that spring. Smooth, dry-skinned, and thick as young girls' arms, they laid claim and coupled in silence. Among Halloween costumes, vintage dishes, atop dusty boxed pornography. Wisteria granted Russell-covered access. Red painted soffits beckoned them in. They multiplied silently, repeatedly, inspired by photos whose thump and drive swelled between rub of scale on scale. Snakes discovered by unluck, unsuspecting insurance adjuster, agog at their presence, their writhing lives, broke silence along with our ceiling. Penetration by way of high heel, shoe dropped. Days later, a lonely, lusty straggler strained to woo my mother, draped itself in seductive coil round her wall-mounted medicine chest, arced and tongue-flicking, all fiery-eyed but silent. What had it absorbed in that nest of porn? Father dead since winter, duly ashed and scattered, only one who knew, silent as the tomb. His personal trove, his father's saved and stashed, content unbridled, running to excesses, gave snakes all kind of permission. My mother upped the ante of her hate. Insurance couldn't cover that wound. Told anyone who would listen, as if, that's everyone. I never saw the evidence for her succored animus, just the violence it did silence. I never got to parse my heartstrings till she no longer knew me, seemed to look right through me, and it no longer mattered whose wanting side I clove to. One each side the grave, they sunder me with silence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Appreciate that. Next, we are going to have Jan Fraser read, and Jan is working on a manuscript, and she's recently discovered that she can write prose poetry. So I'm excited to hear what you're going to read for us today, Jan.
Oh, okay. Because I've been traveling, I'm not able to have the poem right in front of me, so you may just hear my voice because I've got to go somewhere else on my phone. I hope that's okay. Okay, this is just a second here.
Are you
yeah,
in Guatemala, Jan?
I'm in Guatemala. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Yeah, you're not going to see me. This poem is called On the Way Down, and it's for Raphael. Part 1. Mother Nature shows unexpected raw ferocity. Ominous warnings sweep coastal woodlands, deluged in winter rain. Violent blast, fiery pop, or eerie high-pitched creak precedes a booming crack. Scarcely seconds, rumbling roar of towering trunk, branches crashing toward forest floor. Birds pause mid-song, listen for final, monstrous, culminating thud. We humans gasp and shiver, knowing what we might have missed. Part 2, people too in free fall can catch us unaware, spark splintered fears, set our minds ablaze. A fragile soul slips inside my office one January morning. Spanish is his language. Chooses me to share life's supply of painful secrets, identities which intersect his anguished heart. Before he finds a pathway into spring, when fear takes hold, he runs the streets. I see him in my dreams, in darkness on a bridge, offering arms to stop or slow another in descent, the burden and the gift.
Thank you
There.
for reading for us today, Jan. Thank you. And we did get
Thank
to
you.
Okay,
At the
next we have Catherine Clark Sales. Catherine has published several books of poetry. Her most recent is also from St. Julian Press, The Telling, the Listening. And what are you going to read for us today, Catherine?
This is a poem that's not in that manuscript. That book. It'll be out in Nostos in their next edition. The world looks back. We climb the path, stepping carefully over roots, loose shale, smell of dust and redwood duff. We watch the world, which watches us, from the pungent glazed eye of the skunk crushed on the highway verge, from the dawn vortex of starlings rising above the pines, from the refracted streak of light in the agate pebbles along the stream. Cat's eye, chatoyance, the world looks back. We see ourselves as a part, visitors from a life of cubicles and screens, until we catch the eye of the world and find ourselves observed from the ocular knot in the furrowed oak bark, from the unblinking swirl where water gathers at the base of the hill. And into that pupilless eye we fall and fall.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm going to pull an audible here. It'll add just a couple of minutes. And that is, I see Joe Zaccardi in the audience, former poet laureate of Marin County. Joe, did I tell you were going to read a poem today? I can't hear you. You're muted. You have to
No,
unmute.
you didn't mention that.
Oh, okay. All right. Would you read next time for us?
Sure, of course.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. So before Joan Barano reads for us, I would just like to announce our next Sturgeon Moon poetry reading. It will be on a Sunday instead of on Saturday. It'll be Sunday, December 17th. And reading will be Ron Starbuck, founder and editor of St. Julian Press. And he has a number of books that he has written. One that I'm very familiar with because I just wrote a review of it, and I'll be posting that review well before the reading, is A Pilgrimage of Churches, which is a project that he did taking black and white photographs of churches throughout the Midwest and in his own area in Houston, and then pairing poems from them. It's a wonderful book to hold and look at and read, and I hope he reads from a lot from that book. And reading with him will be Miriam Haradfar. St. Julian Press has just published her first book, Shards of Time, and I believe, Ron, you're going to possibly be reading some poems from the late Kevin McGrath's books. Is that correct? You'll be reading some poems there too. So watch for that. I'll be sending out announcements. That's December the 17th. And those will be our featured readers. And if you would like to be on the open mic for that reading, please email me. I put my email address in the chat. And now to close out our reading for our open mic, we have Joan Barano. I've known Joan for quite some time. She was the founder and director of the Dominican University's low residency MFA program. She happens to be the wife of David Watts, and she's published many books from St. Julian Press, A Slight Thing, Happiness. She will actually be reading in January. I think the date's the 23rd. You'll be hearing more about that. And a book she also recently published was Reading Szymborska in a Time of Plague, that won the Brick Road Poetry Prize. So Joan, what are you going to read for us today?
Well, I'm going to read a poem from A Slight Thing, Happiness, published by St. Julian Press. Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Terry. The poem is called The Visit, and it's from the point of view of the grandmother in Little Red Riding Hood. I see the windows unlatched again. The philodendron she gave me is glum. The dream I've been saving, what was it? Moths masquerading as lacy lingerie. My mother spitting molars into a drum, slips from beneath my lids and dissolves into the room's dank breath. She comes in then, unfolding the compartments of her basket. Bread, butter, a plastic knife. She still won't trust me after that last pathetic swipe. Jars of jam inked in her mother's loopy hand. Her red wool hat is steamy. Rain? Once again she fools me. She's her daddy's daughter, small tense fingers quick to tie things up. I like the way she's whittled her nose into new angles. I'd eat if I could remember how, and it's difficult when the sheet tucks so tightly under my chin. It's been weeks since I saw my feet, though I trust they're there, faithful as spring allergies. She smears a torn piece of bread and bites. Hungry? Yes. She's tramped through 3 miles of woods, past what I can't forget. Salamanders, lady slippers, quail, past the ghost wolf rumored to haunt the hydrangeas outside my house. I'd be on my own but for her mercy visits. When light strikes the ceiling, I watch the spiders spin. Oh, if you could see my garden, foxglove, primrose, dahlias lush as strawberry cream. The year the peonies came back, I touched his rough fur, but that's as far away as a dream. They hung his body from a myrtle branch. Come on, Grandma, wake up, she says, eat.
Thank you, Joan Barano, for that lovely poem to close us out. And thank you. Let's acknowledge one more time our featured readers today, David Watts and Matt Bialer. Thank you for reading your wonderful work. And thank you to all of our open mic readers. And thank you for all of you who attended. We had 40 attendees, and it kind of dwindled down for the open mic, which it occasionally does. But we understand, and thank you so much for being a part of Sturgeon Moon Poetry. Keep your eye out for a save the date for December the 17th for our next reading. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, David. So yeah, we had 40 at the beginning of the reading. It dropped to 34 with Matt reading, and then it just kind of dwindled down to 22. But yeah, so 40's got, we range from 30 to 50, right? 50 is the most we've had, and so we hit that median number right in the middle. So that's I think that's pretty good for a holiday week, right?
Sure.
Very good.
Anytime.
Good. And thank you, all of you, for coming. Appreciate it. Good to see all of you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a happy holiday season. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.